The way we like to put it is it's a next gen money market. It's one that lets you lend and borrow with far more assets, far more tools and flexibility, and with far more depth of these integrations than anywhere else. You could continue to utilize all the things you love about your assets, whether it's investing, staking, rewards, voting, all of those things, even while borrowing against the asset.
Impossible. You never know till you try.
Hey, GM guys. Thanks for coming to BlockHunters Voices. How are you guys today?
GM, doing well today.
Doing well.
Great to have you guys on board. It's going to be a long discussion. We have a lot of events recently in crypto, and especially on Dolomite, so I want to pick your brains today.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Usually, I like to split crypto people into two categories. The people that were born into crypto, so mostly Gen Zs, and the people that actually had careers and lives before entering this ecosystem, the rabbit hole. And I want to know, who were you guys before Web3, and how did you end up falling down the crypto rabbit hole?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll kick off, and then I'll pass it over to Corey, and then we can take it from there. At least for me personally, I got into crypto back in 2013, which, I mean, that was well before I had a career, before college. And I was active on a programming forum at the time. 2013, it was around when Bitcoin hit $1,000 for the first time. A lot of people were talking about it, and the forum, a few people were starting to take an interest in crypto, and someone was working on something that really, with today's perspective, could barely be called an altcoin, but it was an interesting project, and I was able to help out a little bit with the miner, and it overall just caught my attention, and introduced the entire idea of crypto, that I could mine something on my PC, that I could trade this asset digitally over the internet with someone. And that led me to look deeper into Bitcoin, and really from there, just I was in and out a little bit as a user, but it really wasn't until 2017 that got much more into trading, diving into white papers, trying to really see what was going on with technology, what was going on with the broader crypto space. And that's also really when Corey got in deeper as well, but I'll let him back up the timeline a little to when he started.
Yeah, as for myself, I started in 2015 and I was in college at the time, building some game modding and exploitation software. My PayPal account got shut down, and I started taking Bitcoin for payment then. So very natural progression from that into Bitcoin, and of course being involved in the industry and going to school for a dual degree in computer science and business. It was a very natural progression to go from that into Ethereum. So Adam and I were doing some really early on development into things that were called open finance at the time, which was a precursor to DeFi before DeFi was even a coined term, and actually built one of the first decentralized exchanges together with him that was actually called Dolomite back then. So I think we were kind of at that inflection point that you're talking about, whether like you were born into it versus made a career out of it. I feel like we're kind of at the intersection of both, really, and fell into it.
Yeah, that's because you guys started very early. You got the really wild west of this world.
Yeah, it was definitely a very different space back then. It was DeFi. This is before DeFi was really a term. This was before a lot of the culture of our modern DeFi world has really built up. I remember going to an early crypto meetup. I want to say 2018, somewhere around there, where I think there were 6 people at the meetup. Compared to the conferences today, the scale of the sponsorships and events and everything, it was 6 people meeting up at like a food court at the mall. And a lot of them were really those kind of those real original crypto people, the ones who are really in it for the pure technology or the pure libertarian, independence of it. So Yeah, it's certainly grown and changed quite a lot. And really, the only background we had before that was just Corey and I. We had met freshman year at college, same dorm, same floor, same major, computer science and business, joined a dual degree. And yeah, we had worked together on countless projects, hackathons, coding competitions, those sort of things. And we just really like building things. And that's where it felt very natural for us. We took an interest in crypto. We saw that there were a lot of shortcomings with centralized exchanges in 2017. Many of them grew far too quickly, and they didn't have the security or often the ethics to manage the huge amount of deposits they were getting. And it led us to look for alternatives, and that's where decentralized exchanges really took our interest. It's where Ether Delta existed, but really was not the best to use, but the technology was cool. And so start of 2018, we just started building. We didn't know where it was going to go. We thought the technology had a lot of potential, that decentralized exchanges as a concept could really grow. And but back then, this whole of decentralized exchanges, all of them maybe collectively did $5 million of trade volume on a good day. And we had to explain to people why they would ever want to use a decentralized exchange, or what MetaMask is, or anything like that. So of course, the DeFi has grown quite a bit since then, and Dolomite itself is not the decentralized exchange that it started out as in 2018. It's also gone through its own evolution.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, you didn't really had the term DeFi until 2020, right? Until DeFi summer.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a few people building a few products back then. It didn't really have that the layers that are so distinct to DeFi. That infrastructure really needed that time to build up, and it's something where it's very it's self-perpetuating. It's something it's very chicken and egg, I guess would be the way I'd put it. No one wants to come in and trade on a decentralized exchange if there's no liquidity and there's no one trading there. And it really had to build up over time by people building better and better applications to make it actually something enjoyable to use, something that was possible to use, to build up just that Web3 layer to actually interact with it. And with how much further it's come now, it makes it so that countless projects are being built in DeFi, and it's fantastic to see.
It takes a lot of balls to bet that big into something that was so early.
It helps that it was just fun and we took an interest in it. That makes all the difference.
So basically, you could say the roots of Dolomite started in 2019, and between that and the actual launch, what happened?
When you say the actual launch, you mean like our modern version of
yeah,
Dolomite?
exactly. I think the first launch was on Arbitrum, right?
Yeah, well, the very first one, back then it was a hybrid DEX, off-chain order matching, on-chain settlement. The whole idea was we wanted to make sure that that orders could be placed easily on and off the order book, so that market making could be done. This was before AMMs, and Uniswap. So that was what we had been building back in 2018. This was pre-Arbitrum, pre-Layer 2s, pre-everything.
Yeah.
But as DeFi arose and evolved, and AMM started becoming the standard, and that's what was easy to interact with at a smart contract level. We saw things that were heading in a slightly different direction than what we had built. We had some product market fit. We had some users, some customers, some usage and integrations, but we wanted to actually build something that would fit into what DeFi would be tomorrow. And at that point, we were very frequent users of a lot of protocols, and it led us to really see an opportunity. We saw the limitations of something like an Aave or Compound, or even DYDX, and we felt that DeFi of tomorrow was going to have this much broader set of assets, all this extra functionality. That's where it was heading. When something like Aave or Compound were being built, there was maybe a dozen assets that anyone cared about, and they didn't really do much. So having just simple lending and borrowing that's all you really needed. But look at DeFi today. It's countless assets. A single protocol could have dozens of assets, and the functionality being built into each asset is so much greater. And that's and these aren't some obscure assets. These are ones that have real usage, real yield, real functionality, and lots of people that want to use all of them. So that's really what we built Dolomite for, is to be able to be built for the DeFi of tomorrow, the breadth and depth of those kind of assets that we're seeing more and more of every day.
And how would you explain Dolomite to somebody that never heard about it?
Yeah, I'd say it's well, I guess it depends on how never heard about it is, but the way we like to put it is it's a next gen money market. It's one that lets you lend and borrow with far more assets, far more tools and flexibility, and with far more depth of these integrations than anywhere else. You could continue to utilize all the things you love about your assets, whether it's vesting, staking, rewards, voting, all of those things, even while borrowing against the asset. It makes it easy to loop to maximize your yield, to maximize rewards, or I guess we had price exposure. There's a lot of ways that you could use Dolomite. We really give you that freedom, that flexibility, and we could support over 1,000 assets, where other protocols are often a little more constrained in the number that they could list, or the type of asset, the complexity of it. We could list far more diversity of assets as well. So it's just really building a money market without limits is what we're going for.
Before diving in a little bit about everything technical about Dolomite and the product itself, as we've talked a little bit earlier, back then DeFi was almost entirely retail driven, and right now institutions are circling Web3 in a much bigger way. How does that shift impact your long-term vision for Dolomite?
Yeah, Corey, I was actually I think this one it might be up your alley. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I think in general, like, we've seen DeFi evolve a lot, as you can kind of heard Adam talk about, like, our history in particular. And over the course of the first couple of years of DeFi's existence, things were rapidly iterating. What was considered contemporary was easily looked at as archaic only months after things were being released. Thankfully, with bigger institutions coming into play, crypto being more legitimized, and DeFi being looked at as a real sector, we've seen far less iteration as far as, like, really big sweeping changes are concerned on the product side, where now people are, like, focusing on doubling down on capital efficiency and focusing on things that work, and less on doing things that completely uproot the financial system. Because, like, as cool as it is to be able to build really unique and novel things in DeFi, we have to also remember that if you keep changing things rapidly, like, your users need to keep chasing you to where you are, and users are very uneasy about, like, throwing money into brand new things. Like, during DeFi summer, in the early days of crypto and DeFi, like, that was okay because, the expectation was rapid change. But after all the hacks have occurred and the dust has settled, people are now much more weary of putting their money into things that are not battle hardened yet. And that's why we took the approach with Dolomite that once we rolled it out, not only would it be a groundbreaking money market platform, but we also took the posture that our battles will be best won over months and years and not days and weeks. Because we think that money market platforms in particular are like the crypto equivalent of a bank. And you want to build a relationship with your bank. You want to trust your bank. You don't want to be worrying overnight that your bank's going to go under or have catastrophic failures with it. And that's something that we wanted to strictly avoid, and we thought we could just survive, and therefore that's how we'd thrive.
Yeah, that's the only way. You have to think long term. And I see that this, in crypto back in the day, we had like this mindset that everybody wanted to chase the fast dopamine, the fast winnings. But right now I see that we are starting to see people thinking long term, and enough with the rugs and the scams that want to get rich overnight.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a lot more of a shift to a focus on yield rather than chasing altcoins, chasing trading, which I think is incredibly healthy. I think DeFi is built for yield, and We of course we couldn't be happier. We think Dolomite's really the home for yield on DeFi, but yeah, I know I see it in my own usage of protocols. It's so different than it was, back what I was doing in 2017 versus what I was doing in 2020 versus what I'm doing now. At this point, it's all just about where can I park my assets, get a solid return on it, and not have to think about it. And I think a lot of people are looking in that direction, and at most are really trying to find those best opportunities. Maybe they move it around every couple weeks or month, but we're seeing more and more people, I think, that are looking for that long-term vision.
Correct. Moving along, Dolomite's modular architecture splits into immutable core layer and a flexible modular layer. Why was this design important? I mean, how do you see it and evolving without breaking?
That was a really important innovation for us, because what we had seen up until that point in DeFi was like people would roll out a version. That version would be good to use for people for 6 months, a year, sometimes at most, maybe 2 years. And then people would be expected to just shift everything over to a brand new version then. Or the team would go silent and everyone in the community would be left wondering why is this team not contributing to the protocol anymore? What's going on with development? We don't know. So what we wanted to do was build a very generic base layer. That's our core layer. It's immutable. It cannot be changed. It has very strict rules in there and we can't change those rules. But it also lays all the groundwork for us to plug in new features to it over time. And so what we did very differently with Dolomite is that we're not focused on building the next version of Dolomite. The version that's out today is the version that will continue to be out for tomorrow. And that's where all of users' end funds are held, where funds are custodied, where people have mainly their trust assumptions in place. The modules layer then basically extends the functionality of Dolomite and allows us to introduce new things while not changing how you custody your assets or changing how people interact with the protocol in really big ways. So this means that if someone builds an integration from Dolomite dating back to late 2022, that integration can still be valid and running to this day, despite us rolling out new features and improvements to the platform over time through these modules that sit on top of it. So in that way, the modules can coexist with each other and not step on each other in a way that's problematic for the users, the developers, or things like that. And that's one of the core things that makes DeFi great. It's the ability to compose around things with very simple assumptions. I think there's plenty of people that built on top of Compound back in the early days. And since then, Compound has gone through 2 different product iterations. So you spend all this time building these really cool functionalities and features only for them to be, essentially made useless over time. No one wants to go waste their time like that, and that's why we designed things this way.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everything is made in a way that protects the user and his funds.
Exactly. There's user protection in mind and developer protection in mind, and sometimes developer protection also leads to user protection. We've seen plenty of times where people build integrations and features on top of existing protocols and do it erroneously, and it leads to hacks or other problems. We wanted Dolomite to be as simple to build on top of as possible, while not worrying about us changing things and therefore that having ramifications for people to worry about.
Sounds great. Can you also explain me a little bit about the virtual liquidity system? I mean, how does it unlock capital efficiency beyond traditional lending protocols?
Yeah, so our virtual liquidity system is heavily baked into that core layer that I was just alluding to. When you think about our core layer, really what it defines is a way for people to move funds in and out of the protocol, borrow funds in an over-collateralized manner, and move assets around between users through direct transfers or through programmatic smart contracts. That's all that Dolomite really is, and we've built it up to look and feel like so much more, but that's just because of all the powerful building blocks you have at your fingertips. The virtual liquidity layer is how we describe the ability to move funds within Dolomite, even if the underlying ERC20 balances or liquidity isn't necessarily there. So a good example of this is think back to the USDC DPEG event that happened in March of 2023. If you were a USDT lender on Aave, you couldn't get your funds off the platform because everyone was borrowing USDT. They wanted to loop it up into more USDC and cross their fingers and pray that USDC was going to repeg.
Yeah, exactly.
And make a lot of money, hopefully, if that happened. Now, but if you were a USDT lender, you couldn't get your funds off of Aave because everyone was borrowing it. And what Dolomite's virtual liquidity layer allows you to do is build features and capabilities with the underlying USDT or the accounting that exists for USDT while not relying on the actual assets being there. So in a simple example, like if we had our smart debt or smart collateral feature rolled out, users would have been able to swap their USDT for USDC even if the USDT doesn't exist, and then pull off USDC liquidity from Dolomite in that case. So it actually fixes some of the biggest problems that exist right now in money markets today, where like there's not enough liquidity for you to withdraw because you could swap with someone else and actually position for a fast exit then. It also makes for a lot of other cool features that we'll talk more about later in the conversation.
Yeah. Is it something similar with, like, when you deposit like Ethereum on a centralized exchange, and basically because you don't have all the confirmations, you can still trade it even though the funds are not confirmed in the address?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it also. It's like it makes certain assumptions about the underlying assets that are deposited in the protocol, and what you can do with them, provided that like everything's functioning healthily, where like loans are taken out in an over collateralized manner.
Yeah, makes total sense, and thank you for that, Corey. You guys recently expanded on Ethereum after Berachain and Arbitrum. I think this is a big step, especially because Ethereum is doing very good right now. Why was now the right time for expansion from your point of view?
Well, we actually really dragged our feet with deploying on Ethereum for a while because we had built Dolomite to really take advantage of the faster speeds and cheaper transactions that Arbitrum had offered. Deploying on Berachain was the next evolution of that because of all the neat functionality that exists on there with proof of liquidity and the asset issuers that are on Berachain as well. Ethereum being a bit slower and a bit more expensive was problematic for us to overcome for a while, until we had very clear and defined business opportunities that made sense for us to go pursue. So we have a close relationship with the World Liberty financial team, and it made sense for us to deploy Dolomite on top of there so that we could start to support their stablecoin USD1 and do value aligned things that could help grow their protocol and unite their community around a single money market protocol.
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum only makes sense if you are going after the institutional liquidity, because when you have that kind of liquidity, you don't really look at the gas fees. You don't really look at, it's a little bit slow. You look at the security, and Ethereum right now is the most secure chain.
Yeah, that's very true. And so for us, like when we think about the institutional play, if you want to be able to really connect with institutions where they are right now and not where you hope they will go, Ethereum is the place. And if you want to deploy on Ethereum, like you need to have some cohesive institutional strategy or some edge over your competitors, or else you're not going to really have a good time on there. We feel like we found our edge, and it made sense for us to start making moves on there.
I'm gonna derail a little bit because I had an impromptu thought right now. How do you feel about these new stablecoin chains that are launching? You're talking about Arc, Stable, Plasma. Are you planning to deploy Dolomite on chains like this? Is it an opportunity there?
There probably is an opportunity there, but we typically have not been like very fast to deploy on new chains without like having, like I said before, some kind of edge or use case that we can really tackle with it.
Mm-hmm.
And my personal belief, which isn't necessarily the belief of Adam, so I don't want to speak for him, but my personal belief with these chains is like that they're trying to own the whole technical stack. And if you look at the businesses that traditionally make the most money in crypto, you have blockchains, which could be like your layer ones, basically, arguably now layer twos. You have stable coins and you have exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see situations arise where like people start to try to own two out of those three things, it starts to put up a walled garden, and people don't like playing with that other venue then. Look at like USDC, how it's heavily enshrined in Coinbase. USDC doesn't have the same level of penetration across other global exchanges because they see it as a Coinbase product. Similarly, so like you can look at Binance Smart Chain and what they've done with BNB. and people didn't want to integrate necessarily like BUSD or FDUSD from Binance and because of it. I think that we're going to start to see like very interesting fracturing occur because of this. And the only way that I see the stablecoin chains really doing well is if there's someone like Stripe that already has a very large merchant network that they could just plug into with it. Otherwise, they're just building tech that's, you know, a solution in search of a problem. And it's going to be an uphill battle to try to convert these people over.
Yeah, makes total sense. I mean, at the end of the day, USDC can be blacklisted, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's a feature of stablecoins, that they have to have the necessary controls in place to comply with existing regulations and you know, the regulators out there.
yeah, in a sense, it makes sense, but you still have like decentralized, like DAI, right? So DAI is more, you can blacklist DAI, which is Sky right now. How is it called?
Yeah, I mean, largely like DAI is predominantly backed by like USDC and other centralized assets.
Oh, so it's
and
kind
it,
of the same thing.
Yeah, but DAI itself as a stable coin is not able to blacklist wallets. So like it's been interesting to see like the lack of value that people place on decentralized stable coins right now. Like if you want to go hold a decentralized asset, people just kind of YOLO into Ethereum, Bitcoin, or other majors. And I just don't see like the demand for DAI, or else I think we would have seen a lot more growth. We've seen
Yeah.
stable coins as a subsector of crypto grow so much over the past year, and like to my knowledge, like I just don't see a lot of growth with DAI happening, where like not even a rising tide is raising all boats as of right now.
No, I don't see anybody talking about DAI anymore.
Well, talking about it's one thing, but like actually like seeing increased growth is a different thing, you know.
How does Dolomite prepare for the regulatory and compliance layers that institutions demand? I mean, it's another game right now for everybody. We're entering a stage where everything should really be put in place.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unclear direction of where things will go in, because we're seeing very clear lobbying to separate out pure DeFi from existing centralized financial services. And so like we've seen some players experiment by like launching new instances of the protocol. Like Aave has Horizon now, which is like their institutional arm that they're like using to onboard institutional capital. I do see like as well, like whether you are an institution, like you're either interacting directly with a large protocol with liquidity like an Aave, or you're interacting with a regulated entity that can serve as your abstraction layer between you and the Aave instance. So like as a simple example, like there might be some market maker out there, some liquidity provider, some desk that interacts with Aave directly. And instead of you interacting with Aave, like you're interacting with that counterparty who is interfacing with Aave basically for you, whether that's, you know, purposeful or not. Like liquidity does get sourced through these inefficiencies eventually through the most efficient route, which, you know, if we're talking about like lending, that's clearly Aave, because centralized lending has not come back since the 2022 bear market. That's one of the subsectors of crypto that really went away, was CeFi lending, and has not made a resurgence. Like Aave's TVL dwarfs the entirety of the CeFi lending space ever since it went under. So clearly institutions are using it in some way.
I was gonna say, even look at how Coinbase does their lending. They do it, I think, built on top of Morpho. Just, you know, they're not even doing it themselves.
Yeah, because
so
you don't
there's
need
value and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you don't really need to do it yourself. I mean, if you work with a good third party.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, I think that's the beauty of DeFi, right? Just build those layers. Why, you know, reinvent the wheel? Instead, you could just access liquidity by plugging into the right protocols and access opportunities in the same way.
Guys, I want to touch point a little bit about Berachain, because the boycott program pulled around $800 million pretty much. What did that teach you about the community trust and liquidity alignment? Berachain is a DeFi chain, and I want to know exactly what I'm thoughts about.
Yeah, with Berachain, we saw as just a very prime opportunity for Dolomite in a couple of ways. we were excited to be able to launch with the chain. That's something that until now we really hadn't done. We entered the Arbitrum ecosystem after it had already been around, which was certainly to our benefit. It helps. I've always said, money markets like ours we're sort of a second layer or second stage protocol, in the sense that we need other protocols to exist to interact with. We can't exist in isolation. We need other assets to list, to provide that added value to. Us by ourselves means nothing. It's not a project. But so it worked well with Arbitrum. We were able to enter and immediately start interacting with some awesome projects, with GMX, a really key one. But Berachain provided this unique opportunity in the way that they were launching, that they were really just trying to kick off with a bang with this pre-deposit campaign that I think really shook things up. It was incredible, the scale of deposits they got, and the number of projects they were able to just launch with on day one. And it meant that on day one, we were able to have significant liquidity and have a bunch of integrations to really just start things off with. It's like fast forwarding 1 year into the history of a chain, rather than having to slowly build it up over time. So yeah, it presented an awesome opportunity in that way. But also just the architecture of Berachain is something that was uniquely appealing to us, in the sense that it's built on this proof of liquidity mechanism, and Dolomite is able to uniquely integrate into that, so that users can participate in proof of liquidity while also borrowing against their assets. And it means they could maximize those proof of liquidity rewards, and it's in a way that really can't be done with other money markets. So we were excited to integrate with that, excited to be able to be there day one, and excited with the hype around it. Berachain really managed to strike this balance where crypto, there's often tech people and like hype people, and you kind of need both. You need good tech, but good tech alone, it's developers would love to believe that if you build something cool, everyone will come and use it, but it's not really the reality. You need to be able to build up that culture, build up that attention. But likewise, as much as some purely hype people can bring a lot of attention for a little while, it burns out very quickly once there's not actual meat on the bone there, if there's not actual technology around. So having the two of them together is the greatest strength you could have in DeFi. And Berachain really had that culture that was really excited about it, but the tech that they built, the mechanisms were very well thought out. They were well informed on the technology and the space in general. And so I think that really got us excited. And overall, I'd say, as far as the technology goes, it was quite a smooth launch. We've seen ones that are far shakier, chains that had been live for a while that were still having issues, but the tech continues to work well, and we saw it with the amount of attention they were able to draw with that pre-deposit campaign, and that really just kicked things off on Dolomite. Well, also just the depth in borrowing liquidity and the opportunities that offered for people.
So basically, on Dolomite, we have a DEX, we have a money market, on top of proof of liquidity, we have several of partnerships from GMX, Pendle, several chains, Ethereum, Arbitrum, Berachain, but also an XP system that gamifies engagement. How has it worked so far?
Yeah, the XP system is one that at this point we've been running for well over 2 years. It was at the time we wanted to be able to give recognition to very active users, to people who were coming to the events, trying out new features. We wanted to be able to go beyond just some standard chatting in the Discord. We wanted to give people some way to show that we saw that you're a really recognized member of the community. And at the time, a lot of projects were doing NFT drops, but it wasn't exactly our style. But what we wanted was something a little more long term, and so that's where this idea for the XP program came together. It's built on top of NFTs, on top of OATS. What is it? Online Attention Token from Galaxy, I believe it stands for. Essentially just NFTs, but each one worth a certain amount of XP, and given out for things like attending a Twitter space, trying out a new integration, hitting certain milestones for usage on Dolomite. And really, from the beginning, the plan was we want to build this system that can run for years, that it's not going to overinflate it very quickly. That's, something that's very flexible that we could build on top of and continue to utilize in a lot of different ways. And of course, funny enough, then it was only a few months later that loyalty points and those sort of things started becoming a lot more common. And they actually built that functionality into Galaxy a few months after we launched XP. So, if we if we had waited, we could have done it more simply than doing it through the NFTs. But our system continues to work well, and it's meant that we have some users who have really just built up those levels, and we could recognize that. They have a little flair in the Discord. We have exclusive groups. We've done, when other projects have given us NFTs to give away to the community, we've given special access for those higher level users. When it came to the airdrop, people had bonuses and multipliers based on their XP. And we'd love to continue to use it. It's something where we're still building on top of it. We just launched a social starboard on Galaxy, is what they call it, and that gives our people aura for posting about Dolomite on Twitter, discussing us, and that's now a new way to earn XP as well. And we'd love to see it built into our ODolo incentives, built into governance, to really give a voice to those who are the most active in the community. But of course, that'll be up to the DAO, up to the governance. But it's also something that we really built to not be wallet size dependent. It's oftentimes, rewards and incentives are really just built around how much money you're putting in. But by and large, I think with maybe either no exceptions or very, very limited exceptions, earning XP has been something that you could do with any size wallet. That it's just about being there, trying things, being an active member of the community, and that's what we've loved about the system.
Yeah, basically being persistent.
Exactly.
But looking at your user base today, who are Dolomite's power users? Traders, DAOs, degens, institutions, yield farmers. Who do you think?
I'd say the yield farmer certainly describes our users well. It's often people are here to maximize their yield, maximize their access to opportunity. And, of course, that could be over a huge range of wallet sizes. We're built for, all sizes. We have people who are coming in with $100 just trying to find a nice yield opportunity. And we have people who are coming in with hundreds of thousands who are then looping that up 5x and beyond through delta neutral strategies. And that's sort of what we're built for, is to build for these loops, or to be able to just simply lend and earn yield and power other people's loops, or to just do some simple borrowing. But it's very much in that lending, borrowing, and yielded maximization is what I would say.
Yeah, sounds great, Adam. And as we touched point a little bit earlier, we are now entering a new chapter where we see Wall Street firms, ETFs, banks starting to touch the DeFi rails. Do you think institutional liquidity can coexist with the degen culture that built DeFi, or will one overpower the other?
I think that there's definitely an area for them to coexist and even overlap in some ways. And because DeFi, at least on Ethereum and EVM chains, is built to be very composable, they might interact with each other indirectly. Kind of like our example before of like how DAI largely is backed by USDC and stablecoins like that. Like there could be a world in which like USDC becomes like the an institutional stablecoin of choice, and largely already is in a lot of ways. And that's coexisting along like the very true DeFi degens in the world that are only using DAI. But it just kind of happens in these indirect mechanisms that new products and services get built that are able to cater to these different crowds then.
Yeah, I think if anything, institutions help power some of the degen stuff. It provides that sort of base infrastructure, base layer, base liquidity that then the degens kind of build around and continue to build on top of. And I think there's always going to be interest in that degen side of things, and just creating more opportunity, more liquidity that only fuels it further and brings in more developers as well, people to keep building more tools, and all of that just helps the entire space, from the most institutional to the most degen.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I feel like institutions really look at something like a safe field. How does Dolomite balance building products that attract them while keeping the composability and risk taking that makes DeFi unique?
Yeah, I think the definition for safe yield has definitely shifted a bit over the past couple of years. But largely speaking, like what I consider to be safe yield when I'm looking for opportunities in DeFi is, if I can put smart contract risk on the side for a moment, because that's kind of a separate can of worms. It's what does my potential loss or loss of principal capital look like? And when it comes to like just very pure lending opportunities, like usually that chance is relatively low as long as the underwriting is being done responsibly. Whereas if like you're adding two-sided liquidity into a, for example, concentrated liquidity pool or a full range pool, it depends on which assets you're underwriting with, and your ability to take on negative yields and permanent loss because of price swings and things like that become much higher. And that's where I'd start to like venture in the realm of calling that unsafe yield, because yield may be higher, but it comes with a lot more risk or responsibilities to hedge in order to tame it and make it something that's very consistent for you. So that's kind of like how I separate things out. But Adam, I don't know if you have any differing thoughts.
No, I think you put it well. There's really a spectrum of I guess risk in DeFi. You could certainly, like, the most basic is going to be your lending on just something like an Aave or Dolomite. That, or the products that there are plenty that are stable coins built on top of treasuries, for example, that are just passing along the majority of that yield, and that sort of thing is about as safe as you could get. I mean, realistically, you're looking at smart contract risk, as Corey mentioned, always exists, but a lot of times you have to take into account that economic risk. But the nice thing about DeFi is it really lets you choose your own risk threshold. You could just be doing that most basic form of lending and earning just that nice basic yield, but you could take that a step further, engage with protocols that are getting a little more experimental, or LPs that are really just giving you those fees from users, and then take it a little further. Maybe you want to get involved in some vault, some kind of loop, something that's really putting that extra leverage on there. And beyond that, that's really the biggest strength of DeFi. It's a choose your own adventure in which degree of risk is appropriate for you.
Yeah, the only thing that I see here is that we need tons of more of education into DeFi, because nobody understands shit. It's very hard to navigate DeFi if you're not experimented.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it keeps getting better.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a lot rougher back in 2018. I remember just trying to explain anything about what MetaMask is, or what is a DEX. Why would anyone use a DEX? But it's gotten a lot better, and the tools have gotten better. The wallets have gotten better. Bigger institutions have really taken up the mantle of education. Coinbase works hard to educate people on these things, and it's good to see. And I think that we're going to be seeing these sort of meet in the middle. The tech will get more accessible and better, but also from just the user focused applications. People are going to build simple apps that obscure a lot of the crypto aspect of it. I mean, not for the sake of hiding it, but just for the sake of, I don't think of TCP/IP every time I use the internet. It's about making just simple applications that are built on cool technology, and those sort of meet in the middle, where the simplest users are using applications that are built by great designers, great developers, to be very accessible and focus on simple use cases, focused on just making it easy to understand. And those devs building that tech layer underneath are really just building that cool technology that powers it, and together those two make it accessible without a single user having to understand the entire tech stack. And I think that's really the way that this all succeeds. It's those layers and layers that you could build on DeFi, where each one just makes makes it a little bit simpler, a little bit easier to interact with, a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah. Guys, I want to look a little bit into the future. Can you give us a little sneak peek into the upcoming features? I know we're gonna deploy on Botanix very soon, so how does the future look for Dolomite?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Botanix is one. We're actually live there now, but it's still very early days. They're still launching some of the early features of it, and that launch is all about reaching out to the Bitcoin community. That's really what they're looking for. It's this very Bitcoin native chain is built on Bitcoin. You're using Bitcoin on the chain. And we think there's a huge amount of potential there. Bitcoin, so many of the services are still very centralized. People are trading on centralized exchanges. If they're earning yield at all, they're doing so through a centralized platform, and it's so backwards, I think, compared to the entire idea of Bitcoin. And so by providing them with this non-custodial, transparent, decentralized alternative, I think that if anyone could break into the Bitcoin community, the potential there is massive. The Bitcoin community is massive, and we've talked to people in their community. We were at Bitcoin 2025, and a lot of them were amazed that even just the basic yield, something that we take for granted, on our side of the fence, the yield that we were able to offer was something that was awesome to them. The LTVs that we could offer, the amount you could borrow stable coins against Bitcoin or vice versa, was also just awesome to them. And so I think there's just this huge untapped potential in that market. But yeah, we have a lot of other features beyond that. Further on the horizon are things like stop loss and take profit on borrow positions on your loans, so you can really manage that risk even further and create those sort of unique positions where the opportunity is fully being captured. We have discounted borrowing for VE Dolo holders, which goes into our tokenomic side of things, but essentially those who are they've locked their token for the sake of governance and other benefits will get discounted borrowing, which plays a big role in the profitability of these loops and this yield that people are going for. We have a smart debt and smart collateral feature, but Corey, I don't know if you wanted to dive into that one a little further.
Yeah, it's something I loosely brought up earlier on in our conversation, but smart debt and smart collateral is a really important feature for the future growth of Dolomite and stretching out that capital efficiency that we were talking about. So what users can do is essentially, if they have, like, for example, ETH collateral, they're borrowing USDC debt, users can choose to opt into it, and it will turn their USDC debt into market-making liquidity against other stablecoin pairs that you choose, like USDT. The same thing can be said as well for, like, ETH collateral being tradable into, for example, like wrap staked ETH. So what this does for users is it takes idle liquidity that's on there, whether it's racking up debt or being paid yield, and actually allows you to start market making with it in a risk-defined way that you're able to control in order to maximize yield generation. So in a simple sense, if you're earning 5% APR on trading fees on your debt, but you're borrowing at 10% APR, well, all of a sudden your net rate becomes only 5% now because you're earning 5% at the same time. So this allows us to stretch efficiency a lot for end users, allows them to potentially pay less on their positions, even when borrow fees are pretty high, because historically they've been pretty high on Dolomite because of the yield premium that exists on our platform. But we think it's really important because it'll allow Dolomite to also transcend lending and turn into more of a hybrid DEX at the same time. So a lot of exciting reasons to be really amped about this innovation, and we're really excited for what it'll do for not just our community, but for the broader DeFi ecosystem as a whole.
Thank you for this, guys. I know it's kind of late, and I want to ask you some questions that are a little bit more personal. Like, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs or founders in general who are just starting out in crypto or thinking about building something in this space?
I'd say just build. Yeah. It's just about building. You need to. I mean, that's really what got us into the space, is just to jump in, to build, to create because it's of interest, because you like it. It's, if you enjoy it, it's never really going to be a grind. It's never going to be painful to do, and you're always going to be able to discover new opportunities. It's if you don't have the passion for the space, it's hard to really understand it, understand the opportunities, understand the needs to really spot what's lacking. But it's yeah, I think you just need to jump in and start building. There's really more educational tools than ever, more ways to learn Solidity and web development and Web3. It's never been easier, but start with something simple, start with something small, maybe build something that just lets you interact with a protocol in a new way, and just start building and put it out there to the world and keep iterating, and eventually find the thing that really grabs you.
Did you have like some early believers, mentors, somebody that helped Dolomite along the way, or moments that gave you confidence to keep shipping? I mean, it's been a long journey, guys. Crypto is like 20 years.
Yeah, it really has been. But yeah, I mean, let's think about that one. I think, of course, the earliest one, at least in Dolomite's journey, is Daniel Wang from Loopering was the first one to really believe in us. He was our initial investor back in 2018 when we were just building on Loopering because we loved it. When we just had an idea for what a DEX could be, and we were able to take that idea and turn it into something real, thanks to him jumping in and investing. But from there, it's been I think mostly about the friends that we've made along the way, the lessons that we've learned just from
Every piece along the way.
Yeah, I mean, Corey, I don't know if you had someone in mind.
I was thinking of the same person with Daniel because, really echoing what Adam had said about just going ahead and starting to build. Like, we just started contributing to open source projects, and Loopring was one of the few that we did a large volume of work for with building things for them. And we're very thankful that they didn't necessarily take advantage of us. Instead, they saw the value in what we were doing, the work and effort that went into it, how quickly we were learning about their tech stack and the broader crypto tech stack as a whole. And they decided to invest in us versus just paying out a bounty and wiping their hands clean. It just made more sense for them. And that kind of pay it forward attitude after you put your best foot forward, I think is really important for establishing your own space in the industry, because there's unfortunately so many scammers and people that are greedy and short-sighted, and it's really important for people to establish what their skill set is, what value they're bringing to the industry, and for you to establish trust. And that can only sometimes be built over time or putting your best foot forward, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, basically he vouched for you guys, not just when somebody does this kind of stuff very early, it's like a vouch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, guys, you are both traders. I mean, maybe right now you don't really have time to trade because you have other stuff to do, of course, but you still have a trader's mindset. Where do you feel we are in the market right now? Are you closer to the top? Can you expect a better market next year? Can we expect better times? Where do you see we are standing?
I'm gonna maybe it's an overstatement, but to fall into the trap that every cycle seems to have is I feel like we're almost at a new paradigm. I remember seeing the chart since 2018. Right at the top is when everyone's like, "Oh, new paradigm, it's never going down again." But it is starting to feel a bit different. We've seen more reach with crypto into the institutional sector, more friendliness to it in the government side of things than we've ever seen before. So, I mean, who am I to say if we're near the top? Maybe it goes a bit further. Maybe it levels off. Maybe it comes back down. But it definitely feels different than it has in the past, and we've been through quite a few crypto cycles. So I'd like to believe that maybe it'll come down a bit. Maybe it'll keep going up a bit, but it's starting to really feel like it's smoothing out a little bit. It's not
and it's more mature.
And drop and then 200% gain than it was before.
Yeah, makes sense. That's what I feel too. I feel we're not gonna see all those crazy bumps. It's gonna be more regulated, more stable liquidity. I mean, that's the future. That's how we're gonna attract people.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I think we're seeing that in the stablecoin narrative, in the shift to yield, and I think that's healthier for usage. There will always be meme coins for people who want to trade them, but hopefully it creates more interest in the long-term viability of projects for the tech behind it, and how things are really being built for the long term.
Guys, before we wrap this up, do you have like any last words for the community, and tell us where we can follow Dolomite and where we can purchase $Dolomite?
Sure. I wanted to say, really thanks for having us on. Fantastic questions. You clearly, know your stuff and know and have a great appreciation, at least for their Dolomite and the DeFi sector and all of that. So I appreciate that. And of course, for the community, it's we love seeing it grow. We love having everyone come out and try Dolomite, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions if you haven't shared them already. We love chatting. We're always on Discord. We're often on Telegram, and we love to hear feedback. Love to hear suggestions. What you'd love to see on Dolomite. So for anyone new, you can find us at dolomite.io. We have at the bottom of the page there all our links to our socials. We always put out our announcements on Twitter, or I guess X, and you could jump into our Discord. Is really the core of the community. You can pair your XP with Discord to get a nice little flair, access to some groups, and always just check out whatever new listings, new strategies, new opportunities we have. Follow along, and we'd love to have everyone for the journey. But thanks again for having us on.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, guys. It's been a blast. I'm gonna leave you guys. I know you're busy persons.
Busy's good though. See you around.
Busy is good. See you.
Have a good one.